What if I told you that smoking DMT is basically like putting on the most advanced VR headset that doesn't exist yet? That your brain becomes the computer, your consciousness becomes the user, and your trip becomes the most immersive virtual world ever created. And all of this happens not through external technology, but through a single molecule hijacking your visual cortex and turning your mind into a biological virtual reality machine. I'm a PhD candidate at Maastricht University, and my research is neuroscience, specifically what DMT does to the brain while inside VR. The more I dug into the neuroscience of both DMT and virtual reality, the more I realized this isn't just a cute analogy. It's a profound insight into how consciousness itself might work. Because both VR and DMT reveal the same startling truth, that what we call reality is actually just a construction created by our brains. So today we're going to break down exactly how virtual reality works on your brain, how DMT works on your brain, and why understanding this comparison might reveal some fundamental truths about consciousness, perception, and what it means to experience anything at all. Let's start with VR, because most of you have probably tried it and it's easier to understand. When you put on a VR headset, the device is essentially hijacking your visual system. Your eyes are normally designed to receive a light bouncing off objects in the real world, but the VR headset blocks all of that natural light and replaces it with artificial light from tiny screens. But it's not just replacing your vision, it's tricking your brain into believing you're somewhere completely different. This happens through something called stereoscopic vision. Your VR headset shows slightly different images to each eye, just like how your eyes naturally see slightly different angles of the same object. Your brain takes these two slightly different images and constructs a sense of depth and three-dimensional space. Then there's head tracking. When you move your head in real life, the images on the screen move correspondingly. Turn left, the virtual world turns with you. Look up, you see the virtual sky. This creates what researchers call spatial presence, the convincing illusion that you're actually inside this digital environment. The key is your brain treats these VR experiences as real. When scientists scan the brains of people using VR, the same areas that process actual vision are lighting up when processing virtual vision. Your visual cortex, the part of your brain responsible for making sense of what you see, can't tell the difference between real photons bouncing off real objects and artificial photons coming from tiny screens. That's why VR can be so convincing and why some people get motion sickness. Your visual system is saying, we're moving through space, but your inner ear, your vestibular system, is saying, nah bro, we're sitting in a chair. The sensory conflict makes you feel nauseous because your brain is getting contradictory information about what's happening to your body. But VR has limitations. Right now, it's mostly visual and auditory. Some systems have haptic feedback, you can feel vibrations and resistance, but VR can't directly change your brain chemistry. It can't make you feel euphoric or dissolve your sense of self. It works by controlling external inputs to your senses, not by changing the internal workings of your brain. VR is external sensory replacement. It blocks your natural vision and replaces it with synthetic vision. But what if instead of blocking external inputs, something could generate internal inputs? What if instead of replacing what you see, something could make your brain create its own visuals from scratch? That is where DMT comes in. DMT, dimethyltryptamine, works completely different than VR, but achieves remarkably similar results. Instead of controlling what goes into your eyes, DMT controls what happens inside your brain. When you smoke DMT, those molecules travel through your bloodstream and across the blood-brain barrier, where they bind to specific receptors called 5-HT2A receptors. These receptors are densely concentrated in your visual cortex, the same area that's highly involved in VR. But instead of receiving visual information from your eyes, these receptors start firing spontaneously. DMT essentially makes your visual cortex hallucinate. It's like your brain's visual processing center starts creating its own movie, completely independent of what your eyes are actually seeing. This is why people describe DMT visuals as eidactic, more real than real, because the same neural pathways that process actual vision are now creating hyper-vivid, impossible imagery. Your brain is using the same machinery it uses to create the real world, but now it's generating its own content. And the content is insane. People consistently report seeing complex geometric patterns, fractals, sacred geometry, impossible architecture. They encounter entities, beings that seem to have their own intelligence and personality. They find themselves in vast, impossible spaces that feel more real and more detailed than any place they've ever been in their waking life. But DMT doesn't just affect your visual cortex. It also impacts something called the default mode network, the brain network responsible for your sense of self, your ego, your narrative identity. When DMT suppresses this network, you can lose the sense that there's a you having these experiences. You don't observe the DMT world, you become part of it. This is radically different from VR. In VR, you maintain your sense of self. You know you're wearing a headset. You can take it off at any time. You're a conscious observer exploring a virtual environment. But on DMT, the boundary between observer and observed can completely dissolve. You're not visiting another reality, you are that reality. And this happens not through external technology, but through your own endogenous neurochemistry. So we have two completely different approaches to reality manipulation. VR works through external sensory replacement, and DMT works through internal sensory generation. When you're in VR, the technology is blocking your natural vision and feeding artificial visual information to your eyes. When your eyes receive this visual information, it goes down to your optic nerves and all the way down to your retinal fugal pathway and eventually to your visual cortex, where it's seen as if it's real visual information. You can still feel your body in the chair. You can still hear sounds from the real world bleeding through the headphones. You maintain peripheral awareness that you're wearing a device. You're consciously participating in an artificial experience. DMT flips this completely. Instead of controlling the inputs to your visual system, DMT makes your visual system generate its own outputs. It's like instead of changing the channels on your TV, DMT turns your brain into the TV station. The visual cortex starts creating imagery without any input from the eyes at all. In fact, many people report that DMT visuals are actually more vivid with their eyes closed. And unlike VR, DMT can affect every aspect of conscious experience simultaneously. Your sense of time, space, identity, emotion, and meaning can all be completely transformed. You're not just seeing a different world, you're becoming a different kind of conscious being. But this is wild. Both VR and DMT reveal that what we call reality is actually a construction created by our brains. Think about it. In normal waking consciousness, photons bounce off objects, hit your retina, get converted into electrical signals, travel to your visual cortex, and get interpreted as seeing a tree or seeing a person. But you're never actually seeing the tree or the person. You're seeing your brain's interpretation of electrical signals triggered by photons. VR proves this by showing that you can have a completely convincing visual experience without any real objects involved. Just artificial photons from screens, and your brain constructs an entirely virtual world. DMT takes it even further by showing that you don't even need external photons at all. Your brain can construct incredibly vivid, detailed, meaningful experiences using nothing but its own internal neurochemical processes. Both technologies reveal that consciousness is fundamentally about information processing and pattern recognition, not about direct contact with some external reality. Once you understand how both VR and DMT work, the similarities become incredible. Both create what researchers call a presence illusion, the convincing sense that you're actually somewhere else, experiencing something real, whether it's a virtual force in VR or a hyperspace realm on DMT. Your brain believes the experience is genuine. Both work primarily through visual system manipulation. VR controls visual inputs, and DMT controls visual processing. But both demonstrate that controlling vision is the key to controlling a conscious experience. Vision is our dominant sense. So when you change what someone sees, you change their entire reality. Both can create immersive environments that feel more vivid and detailed than ordinary waking consciousness. People often describe VR experiences as hyper-real and DMT experiences as more real than real. Both distort time perception. Minutes in VR can feel like hours, especially in engaging environments. Also, a 10-minute DMT breakthrough experience can feel like you've lived an entire lifetime in hyperspace. And another thing, both create vivid, lasting memories of experiences that technically never happened. You can remember a VR adventure or a DMT encounter with the same emotional intensity and detail as any real memory. Your brain encodes these experiences as genuine, meaningful events. But the key insight is this. Both VR and DMT reveal that reality is essentially a computational process that's happening in your brain. Your normal waking experience of reality is just one particular way your brain constructs conscious experiences from available information. VR shows that you can construct convincing experiences using artificial visual information. And DMT shows that you can construct convincing experiences using altered neurochemistry. Both suggest that consciousness itself might be a kind of virtual reality system, a biological process that creates the illusion of direct experience of an external world. This has profound implications. If a virtual environment can feel real, and a DMT hallucination can feel real, then what makes ordinary waking consciousness more real than either of them? Maybe the question isn't whether DMT is like VR. Maybe the question is whether all conscious experience is like VR. But let's be clear about the differences, because they are important. VR requires external hardware. You need computers, screens, sensors, headsets. And DMT uses internal neurochemistry. VR experiences are largely controllable in design. Developers create the virtual environments. You choose what games to play. You can pause or exit anytime. DMT experiences seem to have their own autonomous intelligence. You can't control what you encounter in hyperspace, and you definitely can't pause or exit mid-trip. VR primarily affects vision and hearing, with some tactile feedback. DMT can affect every aspect of consciousness simultaneously. Perception, emotion, cognition, sense of self, sense of meaning. VR maintains ego boundaries. You know you are you. You're wearing a headset, having a virtual experience. DMT often dissolves ego boundaries completely. You might lose all sense of self, and the idea of you having an experience may be forgotten. And VR sessions can last for hours. DMT breakthroughs typically last about 5 to 15 minutes, though they can feel much longer subjectively. And a crucial difference, VR integration is usually immediate. You take off your headset, you're back to normal reality, end of story. Whereas DMT integration can take weeks, months, even years. People spend decades trying to understand and integrate what they experience during a single DMT breakthrough. So what does this all mean? DMT represents the ultimate form of virtual reality. Instead of using external technology to manipulate perception, DMT uses internal neurochemistry to generate entirely new realities from within. It's psychopharmacological VR, biological virtual reality. Your brain becomes the computer, consciousness becomes the user interface, and the trip becomes the most advanced virtual world ever created. And this suggests something profound about the nature of consciousness itself. If both technological VR and neurochemical DMT can create convincing alternate realities, then maybe all conscious experience is kind of a virtual reality created by the brain. Right now, you think you're directly experiencing the world around you, but you're actually experiencing your brain's interpretation of electrical signals triggered by sensory inputs. Your brain constructs a model of reality and presents it to consciousness as if it were a direct experience. And VR hacks the system through external technology. DMT hacks the system through internal chemistry. But both reveal that the system can be hijacked, which means the system itself is kind of a biological VR. This has implications for the future too. Researchers like myself are already exploring combining VR with psychedelics for therapeutic applications. However, my combination is not for therapeutic application. It's just to see what happens when a person trips inside VR. But what would happen if you can experience a DMT breakthrough while simultaneously immersed in a carefully designed virtual environment? You'd have the external technological reality manipulation of VR combined with the internal neurochemical reality generation of DMT. Understanding how DMT works might also help us build better VR. If we can figure out exactly how psychedelics create such convincing alternate realities using nothing but neurochemistry, we might be able to design technological systems that create equally convincing experiences. So let's recap what we've discovered. Virtual reality works by external sensory replacement. It blocks natural vision inputs and replaces them with artificial ones, tricking the visual cortex into constructing virtual environments. DMT works by internal sensory generation. It makes the visual cortex create vivid hallucinations without external inputs at all, essentially turning your brain into a biological virtual reality generator. Both technologies hijack the brain's normal reality construction mechanisms. Both create immersive experiences that can feel more real than real. And both demonstrate that consciousness itself might be a kind of virtual reality system. The key insight is DMT is essentially psychopharmacological VR. Instead of using external hardware to manipulate perception, it uses internal neurochemistry to generate entirely new realities from within your own brain. The differences matter too. VR is controllable, temporary, and primarily sensory. DMT is autonomous, intense, and can completely transform every aspect of conscious experience, including your sense of self. But both reveal the same fundamental truth, that what we call reality is actually a construction created by the brain. And if that construction can be altered through technology or chemistry, then maybe all conscious experience is kind of a biological virtual reality. So is DMT like virtual reality? Absolutely. But it's not just like VR, it's the ultimate VR. It's what VR will become when tech finally catches up to the incredible reality generating capabilities of our own consciousness. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Zeus, have you tried VR while on DMT? And you already know that answer. Guys, I researched DMT and VR and the combination of both. So come to your own conclusions. However, I do want to say combining powerful psychedelics with immersive technology is not for everyone. Please, please use caution. And if you want to know more about my ideas on DMT and VR, then join my Patreon. It's easy, just subscribe right there. I hope you enjoyed this explanation of psychopharmacological VR. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, I read all of them, and follow on X, TikTok, and Instagram, all at Tipado. And remember, whether you're putting on a headset or lighting up a DMT pipe, you're not escaping reality. You're exploring the incredible reality-generating capabilities of your own consciousness. That's way more amazing than any virtual world.